Because we know that men are also hurt by sexist gender roles and a lack of gender equality. From small things like having to pretend you like BattleBots, to pretending you have allergies every time you watch The Notebook, to real traumas that can lead to things like mass shootings. We're talking about the men and the white supremacists who suffer from, perpetuate, and prey on toxic masculinity.
So 2 seconds into this video about toxic masculinity, and she's already blaming all the world's problems, including mass shootings, on white supremacy. I'd like to see where this is going. We knew that she was going to bring up white supremacy at some point in this video. The left can't seem to do a lecture nowadays or a video like this without blaming all the world's problems on white supremacy. So let's see if we can unravel this.
Because men suffer from patriarchy in similar and yet very different ways. And I'm not saying that. He is.
What about all the boys who are profoundly affected in a negative way by what some adult man is doing against their mother, themselves, their sisters? What about all those boys? What about all the young men and boys who have been traumatized by adult men's violence? You know what? The same system that produces men who abuse women produces men who abuse other men.
Damn! If that guy gave locker room pep talks, there would be no more locker room talk.
Yeah, because everybody would be speechless after hearing this guy talk. He sounds like a poster child for child molestation. Hashtag not all men.
He's right. Women and men are both victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and men are the ones who are more often the perpetrators towards everyone.
I really hate this argument because of course men aren't going to call the police if a woman hits them or abuses them. You just don't do that. Any man who's been with their fair share of women, especially if you're like me and been with a lot of Latino women, you know that women have no problem raising their fists at you or throwing something at you if you've broken their heart, if you scorned them or cheated on them. It's something we're taught to deal with as men, though. You know, we duck, we block their punch, and we leave the room, let them cool down, and we come back and have makeup sex. Yeah, it's a different standard, and it should be. A man hitting a woman is a lot worse than a woman hitting a man. And the fact is that, you know, when a man hits a woman, those cases should be reported to the police. But I guarantee you, out of all those cases where men are abusing women, the demographics of those men are not the demographics that this woman is trying to attack with this video.
What are the messages that men and boys get?
Growing up as a boy, we was taught that men had to be tough, had to be strong, had to be courageous, dominating, no pain, no emotions, with the exception of anger and definitely no fear.
No fear? Well, I guess that explains my older brother's fashion choices in elementary school. Also his crippling depression.
So, a subjective argument about your brother having depression does not mean that teaching boys to be strong, to be decisive, and not to show fear is somehow toxic. In fact, it's quite the opposite. 200,000 years of Homo sapiens being on this planet and going through trials and tribulations have shown us that this is the proper way to raise male children. Just because social justice warriors for the last 30 years have complained about it doesn't mean that we should just go rewriting everything we know about child rearing.
And since the plebes among us still watch commercials, we know that real men should shave like a man, smell like a man, wash like a man / feel like a man, have the essence of man, and if you're ever tempted to drink something unmanly like sangria, instead grab a glass of Adam Carolla's Mangria.
A little red wine, a little vodka, a little orange juice, a little pixie dust, and pow, Mangria. But I'm telling you, it's good for what ails you.
Because whatever it is that ails you now, tomorrow what ails you will be the worst hangover ever.
Well, I agree with her that Mangria stuff sounds absolutely awful. But what bothers me is that the left make this argument that somehow advertisements directed towards men to make them feel more manly are toxic, when all you have to do is open a Vogue magazine and you will find that half the magazine is advertisements directed towards women to make them feel more womanly. And this is what bothers me about Marxism and cultural Marxism, is it discounts human nature as if it doesn't exist, as if we aren't motivated to be better than the other guy, to want to be more manly or more womanly. Just like Marxism economically acts like we don't want to accumulate more resources than the other guy. People, it's in our nature, our DNA, not to want to be equal with other people, but to want to be the best that we can be. And if that means other people are not as good as we are, so what? This is in our DNA. This is called survival of the fittest.
So society tells men they must behave in a certain way, but what about the ways they're told to behave towards women?
That men are superior, women are inferior. That men are strong, women are weak. That women are of less value, property of men, and objects, particularly sexual objects.
And that makes total sense if you've watched any TV or movies since TV or movies were a thing.
So again, they're using an argument that is subjective, and this time it's from a person who obviously was not raised well, because all of us out there who were raised right know that we were raised to respect women. And the left act like all men out there don't have mothers, like we don't have sisters, or we don't have daughters of our own. And we do. And those of us who are raised right respect our mothers, we respect our daughters, and we respect our sisters, and we treat other women with that same respect. Sure, some kids who are going through puberty might act differently towards women and be a little bit more aggressive. But what you see in television is not what happens in real life. And even when we're in high school and going through puberty, we still don't go jump on a woman and start humping their leg like a cartoon character.
And all of that pressure takes a toll on men.
As a boy, all I wanted was to be accepted and liked by the other boys. But that acceptance meant I had to acquire this almost disgusted view of the feminine.
I thought I had to put on a show for everyone. I could not be myself, and I wanted to put on what society said was masculinity.
The fear of feeling anything is, if I start crying, I may never stop. I might just cry and cry.
Tell me about it. How do you think we feel when we're PMSing and Toy Story 3 comes on? I have stared death in the face.
It seems as if this video is just a bunch of people talking about their personal experiences where they were brought up by bad parents who did not teach them to respect women. And the fact is that at the beginning of this video, they said that it was white supremacy and toxic masculinity that were responsible for all these problems in the world. But so far, most of the people they have shown who were raised to disrespect women were not white, and they have not linked this to any problems in society other than people just being dicks towards women.
When all these traditionally masculine traits are taken to the extreme, you end up with what psychologists and journalists have called toxic masculinity, a specific model of manhood geared towards complete dominance and control that devalues women and emotions and overvalues extreme self-reliance. In other words, toxic masculinity is Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. That guy was the worst. Who eats raw eggs? That is not good for you. Next stop, Salmonella City. Boop, boop.
Well, there you go, guys. I called it. This woman's whole perspective on masculinity and men is based on cartoon characters and television.
And toxic masculinity has been used to talk about a driving factor behind some of the most violent behavior. We already know that half of female murder victims are killed by a male partner or former intimate partner, but now we have the grim patterns found in mass shootings. Since 1982, 97% of mass shooters in the US have been men. And of mass shootings between 2009 and 2016, over half of the perpetrators had histories of domestic violence. We know the Pulse nightclub shooter who killed 49 people abused his wife and was deeply homophobic. We know that the Texas man who shot 26 churchgoers had previously assaulted his wife and infant son. And we know that the guy who killed 3 people at a Planned Parenthood in Colorado was accused by 2 ex-wives of domestic violence. And to think, if things were slightly different, he could have made a fantastic White House aide.
White House aide, Donald Trump. All right, seriously, guys, this argument she's making pisses me off because what she's saying is that it's toxic masculinity that causes these school shooters to also beat their wives, when in reality, these people are murderers. They are psychopaths. So of course they don't respect human life. Why would they respect their wives or their partners? Of course they're going to beat them up. I'm sure that's true for a lot of convicted murderers, that they also beat their wives. These people have rage issues. And as far as the Florida shooter goes, he didn't choose that nightclub because of toxic masculinity. He chose that nightclub because he was a member of a certain religion of peace that does not look fondly upon the homosexual community. And then that argument about how 50% of women are killed by men they're involved with. Well, I am positive if you flip that on its head, you will find that 50% of men who are killed by women are killed by women they are involved with. I'm willing to bet it's more like 90% of men killed by women are killed by women they are involved with.
But the connections between toxic masculinity and mass murder get even scarier, because more and more mass acts of violence are being committed by far-right extremists, and deep-seated misogyny is often a pillar of hateful ideology. Some have even called toxic masculinity a gateway drug to other extreme views. Take the 22-year-old who killed 6 people in Santa Barbara. He wrote and vlogged his frustrations about feeling like a loser because he didn't receive attention from women. He wrote, "I will punish all females for the crime of depriving me of sex." He also held racist resentment towards black men who had girlfriends, and new reporting shows that he was interested in Nazism. Or the Norwegian mass murderer who killed 77 people and wrote in his manifesto that men aren't men anymore but emotional beings that are there to serve the purpose as a never-criticizing soulmate to the New Age feminist woman goddess.
There are no facts to back up this claim that more of these mass shooters are members of what is called the alt-right. In fact, when you look at crime statistics in general, the demographics who commit the most crime tend to be more like the demographics who tend to vote Democrat. What we saw most recently in Florida was that the media is trying to paint anybody who commits an atrocity as alt-right, even taking unconfirmed reports, as in the case of the Florida shooter, which turned out to be false, and running stories on those reports, just so they can paint somebody who did something horrible as a member of their opposition party.
The alt-right preys on male insecurity and promotes its violent, toxic masculinity as a source of pride. Ahead of the Unite the Right march on Charlottesville, the white supremacist website The Daily Stormer called on its members to take the streets and profess that their membership has problems with women and feels emasculated. Then, the same website mocked the appearance of Heather Heyer, who was killed by a white supremacist that day. In fact, a lot of what defines the alt-right bog of the internet was born out of a specific hatred of women. From the trolls who attacked female gamers in Gamergate, to men's rights activism which sees feminism as an existential threat to men's rights, to pickup artists who prey on male insecurity about not having sex or not having enough sex and then selling them tips on how to act more like a douchebag in hopes of seducing women. Listen, if it didn't work for Gaston, it's not gonna work for you. Haven't you seen the end of Beauty and the Beast?
So outside of some obvious trolling by the Daily Stormer, when you see people like Milo Yiannopoulos talking about women, they are not attacking all women. They are attacking feminists. And even most women do not want to be defined as feminists, because people who have common sense know that feminism is not about equality for women. It is about cultural Marxism and critical gender theory, both of which are designed to undermine capitalism and Western culture. When they undermine the traditional family, when they undermine capitalism or Western values, classical liberalism, they're undermining the very things that gave women their freedom in the first place. They are undermining everything that has benefited women over the past 100 years.
Just listen to Richard Spencer, white supremacist and the guy who made corduroy evil, talk about women's rights.
Feminism has seduced many women into thinking that, oh, men are wrong, I need to be myself, I need to have a career, I need to do this. They wake up, they're 45, they're living with cats, and they are extremely unhappy.
Okay, listen, I'm not gonna ruin my manicure picking apart all that bull, but unhappy with cats? Let's see, would I be happier staying at home, cuddling with my soft, adorable kitty all evening, or sitting across a dinner table from your ass as you mansplain your manifesto on white ethno-states?
So even if she does not find Richard Spencer attractive, that does not mean that he is wrong about this. Study after study shows us that women who take on traditional roles, being mothers or being married, choosing motherhood over a career, those women are proven to be happier and living more fulfilled lives. The fact is you could throw all those studies out the door. Again, 200,000 years of Homo sapiens being on planet Earth, having those traditional roles for 200,000 years should tell us that those are proven over time, and that 30 years of social justice warriors are not going to change what is in our human nature.
Increasingly, for both men and women, our safety, our communities, and hell, even our mental health, and definitely our presidency, depend on redefining what masculinity is.
So guys, there is an existential threat towards women, but it is not coming from people like Donald Trump or people like myself. In fact, it is not coming from the right wing at all. The fact is the greatest threat towards women comes from left-wingers like the woman doing this video and left-wing policies. Things like feminism that leave women feeling regret and living lives that are unfulfilled. Things like open migration policies that have brought in actual rape cultures from countries where actual patriarchy exists. And when you look at the stats of sexual assault and rape cases throughout Europe, you can see there is a real threat towards women from these left-wing policies. Like and subscribe to my channel. Check out Marxism, the New AIDS, my main channel, Patriot Punk, my alt channel, and check out my videos on the Liberty Network. Subscribe to all three, guys. I'm out.